Hello, friends, fiends, and fellow UBTubers, and welcome to episode 736 of the Daily Comic and Collectible. Today, the collectible of the day is the Mcfarlane Toys, Marvel Comics, Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 68, gold label, Spider-Man action pose, statue, diorama base, and backdrop. When the kingpin of crime looks to steal an ancient tablet, will Spidey be up to the task to stop him and his henchmen? This 1/10 scale statue of Spider-Man was inspired directly from the vintage cover of Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 68, with a cover date of January 1969. This statue with diorama base features Spider-Man in the same pose as he is on the cover. This statue is part of the upper tier of Mcfarlane Toys statues, featuring the gold level label of excellence. This Spider-Man statue features Peter swinging through the air by webline, and includes his secured 3D diorama base, with individual students with picket signs with die-cast posing post. This 7-inch scaled statue also features a full cardboard backdrop to Peter's University, and base even includes a nameplate. Also included is a Spider-Man comic cover art card with Amazing Spider-Man issue number 68 on the front and comic synopsis on the back. This statue comes in a dual window display box and was released in 2024 by Mcfarlane Toys. Now, the comic of the day is Spectacular Spider-Man, Volume 1, issue number 165, with the cover date of June 1990, with story by Jerry Conway, art by Sal Buscema, and cover by Sal Buscema. This story is titled Night and Fog. The story opens with a thief known as Bertram Flynn fleeing through the streets of London from the two superpowered assassins known as Night and Fog. They're after him because he pocketed some money during their last heist. Fog manages to envelop Flynn in fog, leaving him vulnerable to Night, who impales him with a dagger that comes out of his armored gauntlet. After their job, the pair return to human form and go to a local pub for a pint. Night is in a dour mood because Flynn was a friend of his. Fog isn't so gloomy, and he suggests that they need a change of scenery. He then tells Night about a job offer they got from the United States, an assassination that has something to do with Spider-Man. Meanwhile, in the United States, Spider-Man swings across Manhattan to the home of the Arranger, where he's come to see why the Kingpin's assistant left a message for him at the Daily Bugle. The Arranger tells him that he thinks the Kingpin is arranging to have him killed. This is because of the Arrangers starting a gang war with the Lobo brothers that allowed Hammerhead and the Chameleon to get a foothold on the New York City crime scene. After the Arranger had recently tricked Spider-Man into a battle with the Beetle, the masked hero isn't ready to believe the Arranger. Thinking this is a trick to eliminate Spider-Man, the wall-crawler leaves the Arranger to his fate. Spider-Man swings off to meet up with Mary Jane so they can have dinner with the Jamesons. Soon, Peter and Mary Jane are on their way up to Jameson's apartment. On their way up, Peter is fussing with his outfit, but Mary Jane tells him to stop complaining. When they arrive, J. Jonah Jameson is acting warm and friendly, and very much out of character. However, the mood is chilled when Peter discovers that Jameson had also invited Joe and Martha Robertson over. Joe is still upset with Peter for faking a photo of Spider-Man and excuses himself to another room. Peter figures that he should deal with the situation and goes to talk to Joe. Things start getting heated when Peter tells Joe that he doesn't want a lecture from an ex-con. Meanwhile, back at the Arranger's home, the arranger makes a number of phone calls in a desperate attempt to save his life. First, he calls Hammerhead and the Chameleon, offering to defect to their side. However, neither mob boss wants anything to do with the arranger, now that the Kingpin has a price on his head. He then calls Detective Frank Farrow and offers to turn over state's evidence on the Kingpin. Farrow is glad to hear it, but he'll have to get back to him when he speaks to the district attorney in the morning. Suddenly, he notices a strange talking fog outside, telling him that it's too late. This turns out to be Fog, who begins seeping in through the window. In a panic, the arranger calls the Jameson house and begs to speak to Peter Parker. Back at the Jamesons' penthouse, Joe and Peter continue to argue with each other. Joe is outraged that Peter would throw his recent time in prison in his face, saying that he has always held his code of ethics since he made the mistake of never compromising them after the Tombstone scenario, and that he paid the price. Peter points out that ethics are important, but so is having compassion and understanding, so you can forgive people when they make a mistake. That's when Marla Jameson comes into the room to let Peter know that there's a phone call for him. When Peter answers the phone, he hears the final words of the arranger, just as Night and Fog murder him. Excusing himself from the party, Peter changes into Spider-Man and goes to the arranger's home. When he arrives, he discovers that the arranger has already been killed. He is then confronted by Night and Fog. However, Night reminds Fog that they were on orders to only kill Spider-Man if he interfered. Since their job is done, Night tosses the wall crawler out the window. However, Fog doesn't want to pass up the opportunity to try and kill the famed wall crawler. Despite his efforts to distract Spider-Man while he falls, the wall crawler manages to lessen his fall thanks to a web line. He still hits the ground hard, and as he recovers, the police arrive on the scene. He tells the police that the arranger has been murdered and chases after Night. Night tries to get away, but Spider-Man won't let up. That's when Fog comes and chokes the wall crawler with his noxious form. When Spider-Man passes out, Night tells Fog that they need to get away before they're arrested. On their way out, Fog dares Spider-Man to come after them in England. Later, the Kingpin watches the news reports about the arranger's murder and thanks Night and Fog's employer that his men did a great job and promises to return the favor should he need it. Overhearing the Kingpin's conversation, Spider-Man learns that Night and Fog are flying back to London and decides to pay them a visit. This story is continued in the Spectacular Spider-Man, issue number 166. Geek Fact: this issue features the death of the Arranger and features the first appearances of the villainous British duo, Night and Fog. Bonus Geek Fact: the men known as Night and Fog were old friends who liked to bully fellow youngsters around them for fun while growing up in Liverpool. While Fog had a drunk father as motivation to be a bully, Night just went along with his only friend's antics, with his sense of honor clouded by Fog's violent nature. Years later, they became contract killers in Liverpool. On one occasion, they were hired by a local mobster to kill one Henry Lewis, a physicist, who, while gambling and owing money, had been working on a particle wave theory. While killing Lewis, Night and Fog accidentally triggered an explosion in Lewis's machinery and were transformed into superhuman killers. After being hired by the Kingpin and succeeded in killing the Arranger, Fisk's failing right-hand man, Spider-Man took to stopping the killers. After going overseas and confronting the duo, Night eventually turned on his partner Fog, under the impression that his brother, Leo, was killed by his old friend. Spider-Man stopped both of them from doing further harm by incapacitating them. The duo's present whereabouts are unknown, although it's probably safe to say they're in prison for their numerous crimes. Fog holds the power of gas mimicry. Fog can transform into a green, semi-solid mist-type form with the ability to control his density enough to strangle victims and obscure the visibility of an area. And Night is a medieval man of armor. That is, he can transform into a large armored form with great resistance to harm and with a sword that extends from his gauntlets. State-of-the-art gaming! Abadox.
Do you have the stomach to battle in the belly of the beast? First, travel past the creature's tongue, past his esophagus, and into his belly, where you will fight the ugly eyeballs. The mutant dogs. The guardian ghouls. And the skeleton fish.
Oh my gosh!
Available only on Nintendo.
Only from Milton Bradley.
And the torch is on fire while Rogue flies higher. Believe when I say geek facts are here to stay. Tell me why avalanche causes earthquakes. Tell me why mutants' lives are always at stake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say final geek facts are a headache.
The Arranger was the right-hand man to Wilson Fisk, also known as the Kingpin. Oswald was deemed the Arranger because of his arranging of Fisk's day-to-day business dealings, be they legal or otherwise. This gave the Kingpin more time to deal with personal matters, such as his wife's illness or his personal vendetta against Daredevil. The Arranger was very good at his job, able to plan ahead almost as well as his employer, and provide contingency plans in case of failure. He'd most often come into conflict with Spider-Man, although the web-slinger ultimately saved his life from the Punisher. His status as Fisk's #1 trustee began to falter when he botched an assassination attempt on the Lobo brothers, allowing them to retaliate in a brutal gang war. Again, Oswald counted on Spider-Man to save his life, but the Kingpin was now aware that the Arranger was losing control. After the loss of a huge chunk of territory to Hammerhead and the Chameleon, Oswald's multiple failings finally put him on Kingpin's termination list, and a hit was put out on his life. In his final hours, he placed a call to Spider-Man for help, but Spidey figured it was yet another trap and refused. He was murdered by British assassins Night and Fog later that same night. However, Spider-Man did seek justice against the duo later, feeling bad that he didn't accept Oswald's cry for help. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me for another Daily Comic and Collectible, and I hope to see you again Thursday. This is Cut Fan Comics Man, and I'll catch you on the flip, baby. Over and out.